7 years she waited. 7 years of cold mornings and sleepless nights. 7 years of training hands that once arranged flowers to grip a sword. 7 years of becoming someone her husband would not recognize. And now, finally, the man who killed him knelt before her, his head bowed, his sword on the ground, his neck exposed, waiting for the blade she had carried across 3 provinces to deliver. She raised her husband's katana. The steel caught the dying light. One strike, that was all. One strike, and the debt would be paid. The ghost could rest. She could rest, but her arms would not move, because the man kneeling before her had done something she never expected. He had not begged. He had not fought. He had simply looked at her with eyes full of exhaustion and said for words that shattered everything, "I have been waiting." If you've felt the weight of her journey so far, subscribe. It helps us bring more stories of honor and sacrifice from old Japan. And tell us, where are you watching from? Takeda Yumi was 20 years old when her husband's body was brought home. She remembered the details with terrible clarity. The servants' faces, pale and afraid to meet her eyes. The blood that had soaked through the cloth they wrapped him in. The way his hand, when she finally found courage to touch it, was already cold. Takeda Hiroshi had been a good husband. Gentle with her, respected by his lord, admired by his peers. They had been married only 2 years, not long enough for children, but long enough for Yumi to believe she understood happiness. The official account was simple. Hiroshi had been ambushed on the road while returning from a diplomatic mission. A ronin, masterless and desperate, had attacked him for his money. Hiroshi fought bravely but was struck down. The ronin fled before help could arrive. A senseless death, a random tragedy, the kind of thing that happened in a world where men with swords wandered without purpose or honor. Yumi accepted the account because she had no reason to doubt it. She wore white for mourning. She prayed at his grave. She did everything a widow was supposed to do. But grief did not fade. It hardened. At night, she dreamed of the ronin, a faceless shadow who had stolen her future, her children, her home. She imagined finding him, imagined making him suffer as she suffered. The dreams became prayers. The prayers became plans. 6 months after Hiroshi's death, Yumi's family arranged a new marriage. A widowed merchant, prosperous and kind. A sensible match for a woman with no children and diminishing prospects. Yumi refused. When they pressed her, she disappeared. The years that followed existed outside of time. Yumi sold her finest kimono and used the money to buy passage to a remote mountain village where, rumor said, an old sword master lived in exile. The master had once served a great lord before some disgrace forced him into obscurity. Now he drank too much and taught anyone willing to pay dachi paid. Not with money, which she had little of, but with labor. She cooked his meals, cleaned his hut, endured his bitter silences and occasional cruelties. In exchange, he taught her. The training was brutal. Her hands, soft from years of calligraphy and flower arrangement, cracked and bled. Her body, unused to physical hardship, screamed in protest. There were days she could not rise from her futon, nights she wept from exhaustion and doubt. But she did not stop. The old master saw something in her that she could not yet see in herself. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, he sat beside her and spoke the only kind words he ever offered. "Grief makes poor steel," he said. "It is brittle. It breaks. But you are not forging grief anymore. You are forging something else." What? Purpose. Purpose holds an edge. By the 3rd year, Yumi could match swordsmen who had trained since childhood. By the 5th, the old master admitted he had nothing left to teach her. By the 7th, she had become something that no longer resembled the gentle wife Hiroshi had married. She had become a blade. Finding the ronin took patience. The attack had happened on a road near the border of Mikawa province. Yumi traveled there first, asking questions in villages and sake houses. The memories were old, faded, contradictory. But slowly, details emerged. The ronin had a scar on his left hand, they said. He carried a sword with an unusual guard, shaped like a coiled serpent. He had been seen in the region several times before the attack, which was strange for a man supposedly passing through. Yumi followed these threads across provinces, through seasons over years. She took work where she could find it, sometimes as a servant, sometimes as a bodyguard for merchants who didn't ask why a woman carried a sword. She lived cheaply, saved carefully, and never stopped searching. The ronin's name, she eventually learned, was Ishida Gorou. He had served the Yamamoto clan before their fall, had wandered since then, and had last been seen in a fishing village on the northern coast. 3 months ago, Yumi arrived at that village. He was gone, but he had left a trail. A sake merchant remembered him. A fisherman's wife had treated a wound on his arm. A monk at a nearby temple had given him shelter for a night and heard him pray for forgiveness. Forgiveness. The word lodged in Yumi's chest like a splinter. She followed the trail north, then east, then south again as it doubled back. The ronin was not running, she realized. He was wandering, moving without destination, as if searching for something he could not name. 2 weeks ago, the trail led to a ruined temple in the mountains, a place abandoned after a fire, now inhabited only by ghosts and one living man. Yumi climbed the mountain path with her husband's sword on her hip and 7 years of cold purpose in her heart. The temple was beautiful once. Stone lanterns lined the overgrown path, their basins cracked and empty. The main hall's roof had partially collapsed, exposing charred beams to the sky. Prayer flags, faded to colorlessness, hung motionless in the still air. And in the courtyard, sitting before a small fire, was a man. He was older than she expected. His hair, tied in a loose knot, was streaked with gray. His clothes were worn but clean. The sword beside him had a guard shaped like a coiled serpent. Ishida Gorou. Yumi's hand found her sword. Her heart, which she had trained to remain calm, began to pound. 7 years. 7 years of imagining this moment, rehearsing what she would say, how she would move, how it would feel when his blood finally paid the debt. She stepped into the courtyard. Gorou looked up. His eyes found hers, and something in his expression shifted. Not fear, not surprise, recognition. "You are Takeda's wife," he said. His voice was quiet, rough with disuse. Yumi's grip tightened on her sword. "You know who I am. I have known you were coming for 3 years. Since I heard a woman was asking questions in Mikawa. A woman with a sword and a dead husband. And you did not run? Where would I run?" He gestured at the ruined temple, the empty mountains. "This is where I have been running to. The place where it ends." Yumi drew her sword. The steel sang as it cleared the scabbard. "Stand up," she said. "Face me. You owe me that much." But Gorou did not stand. Instead, he moved slowly, deliberately, pushing his own sword away from his reach. Then he shifted to his knees, placed his hands on his thighs, and bowed his head. The posture of a man accepting execution. "What are you doing?" Yumi demanded. "Giving you what you came for." His voice was calm, terribly calm. "I killed your husband. I have carried that weight for 7 years. If my death brings you peace, then take it. I will not resist. This was wrong. All wrong." She had imagined him fighting back. Imagined a duel, a struggle, a moment where her skill would prove itself and justice would be earned through combat. "Not this, that, not surrender. Fight me," she said, "or no." "I said fight me." Her voice cracked, the first break in her composure since the training began. Gorou raised his eyes to meet hers, and in them she saw something that stopped her cold. Exhaustion, grief, a weariness so deep it made her own 7 years seem small. "I have been waiting for you," he said, "or someone like you, someone to end what I cannot end myself. I am tired, Takeda's wife, tired of carrying what I carry, tired of waking each morning with their faces in my mind. Their faces, my wife, my daughter, the ones your husband helped kill." The words hit Yumi like a physical blow. "You are lying. I am not. My husband was a good man, honorable. He would never, he was a traitor." Gorou's voice held no anger, only the flatness of long-accepted truth. "He sold information to bandits, trade routes, caravan schedules, patrol movements, for money, for gambling debts he could not pay, no. One of the caravans he betrayed carried my family, my wife, Akemi, my daughter, Hannah. She was 6 years old. The bandits killed everyone and took everything. I found their bodies 3 days later." Yumi's sword trembled in her hands. "You are lying. You killed him because you are a murderer, a ronin without honor. I killed him because he murdered my family. Just as you want to kill me because I murdered yours. We are the same, Takeda's wife. To people destroyed by the same man. No. No, this is a trick. You are trying to save yourself. Gorou shook his head slowly. Then he reached into his kimono and withdrew a folded paper, worn soft at the edges from years of handling. I wrote this for you, he said. Many times I wrote it, trying to find words that might explain. I never sent it. I could not bear to destroy the image you held of him. But you are here now, and you deserve the truth. He placed the letter on the ground between them. Read it. Then decide if you still want to kill me. If you do, I will not stop you. But read it first. Yumi stared at the letter. Such a small thing. A piece of paper that could weigh nothing. Yet she knew, with sudden terrible certainty, that picking it up would change everything. Her sword remained raised. Her arms ached from holding it steady. The man who had killed her husband knelt before her, offering his neck, offering his truth, offering an ending she no longer understood. 7 years. 7 years of certainty. 7 years of knowing exactly who she was and what she needed to do. And now, in this ruined temple, that certainty was crumbling. Her hand reached for the letter. Yumi's fingers touched the paper. It was soft, almost cloth-like, worn by years of folding and unfolding. How many times had this man held it, she wondered. How many nights had he sat alone, reading his own words, deciding whether to send them into the world or keep them buried with all the other things? He could not say. She did not lower her sword, but she picked up the letter with her free hand and stepped back, putting distance between herself and the kneeling man. The light was fading. She moved closer to the remnants of his fire, where the flames cast enough glow to read by. Her eyes found the first line, brushed in handwriting that was careful, almost elegant. The hand of a man who had once been educated, once been someone. To the widow of Takeda Hiroshi, I do not expect forgiveness. I do not ask for it. What I did cannot be undone, and no words can restore what you have lost. But you deserve to know why your husband died. Not the story they told you. The truth. 7 years ago, I was a samurai in service to Lord Yamamoto. I had a wife named Akemi and a daughter named Hana. They were everything to me. When I was away on duty, I thought of them constantly. When I was home, I wanted nothing more than to stay forever. Akemi used to laugh at me for being sentimental. She said samurai were supposed to be stern and distant, not men who braided their daughters' hair and made up stories about rabbits who lived on the moon. But I could not help what I was. Loving them was as natural as breathing. In the spring of that year, Akemi took Hana to visit her mother in the eastern province. They traveled with a merchant caravan for safety. I was not worried. The route was well patrolled. The bandits in that region had been quiet for months, and the caravan master was experienced. They never arrived. Yumi's throat tightened. She told herself it was the smoke from the fire. She told herself she felt nothing for this man and his story. She kept reading. The bandits attacked at dawn, in a narrow pass where escape was impossible. They killed everyone, not just the guards, but the merchants, the travelers, the women, the children. They took everything of value and left the bodies for the crows. I learned of the attack 3 days later. I rode through the night to reach the pass. I found them among the others. Akemi had died holding Hana, trying to shield her with her own body. It had not been enough. I buried them there, in that pass, under a pine tree that overlooked the valley. I marked the grave with stones and sat beside it until the sun set and rose again. And in that long darkness, something inside me died with them. But something else was born. A need to understand. A need to know how the bandits had known about the caravan. The route had been kept secret. The timing had been changed at the last moment. Someone had told them. It took me 8 months to find the answer. 8 months of hunting, of questioning, of following threads that led nowhere and everywhere. The bandits were ghosts, impossible to track. But money leaves trails that even ghosts cannot hide. The payments led to a gambling house in Mikawa. The gambling house led to debts. The debts led to a man who had access to caravan routes through his position as a diplomatic courier. The debts led to your husband. Yumi stopped reading. Her hand was shaking now, not from the weight of the sword, which she had held steady through harder training than this, from something else, something that felt like the ground shifting beneath her feet. She forced herself to continue. I did not want to believe it. A samurai, an honorable man from a respected family, selling information to murderers for gambling money. It seemed impossible, but the evidence was clear. Payment records, witness accounts, a pattern of betrayals stretching back 2 years. Your husband did not know my family was on that caravan. He did not choose their deaths specifically. He simply did not care whose deaths he was choosing. To him, they were numbers, acceptable losses in exchange for the money he needed to cover his debts and maintain his reputation. When I confronted him, he did not deny it. He was surprised that I had discovered the truth, but he did not pretend to be innocent. He offered me money. When I refused, he drew his sword. The duel was real. He fought well, but I had spent 8 months with nothing to live for except this moment, and he had spent those same months pretending nothing was wrong. His skill could not match my desperation. I killed him, and I have carried that killing ever since, not with regret for what I did, but with sorrow for what it cost. His death did not bring my family back. It did not fill the emptiness they left. It only added another weight to a burden that was already too heavy to bear. I am writing this because you deserve to know, not to ease my conscience. There is no easing what I feel, but because you have built your life on a lie, and lies are prisons that no one should inhabit forever. Your husband was not the man you believed him to be. I am sorry. I am sorry for your loss, and I am sorry that the truth is sometimes crueler than the lie it replaces. If you find me, and I believe someday you will, I will not fight you. I have nothing left to protect and nothing left to prove. If my death brings you peace, then perhaps it will have more meaning than my life. Ishida Gorou read the letter twice, then a third time, searching for the lie, the inconsistency, the proof that this was manipulation designed to save a guilty man's life. She found nothing. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the ruined temple, an owl called. The world continued as if nothing had changed, as if the foundations of her existence had not just crumbled into dust. The gambling debts, she said finally. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant, hollow. I knew about them. After he died, creditors came. The family paid them quietly to avoid scandal. I thought. She stopped, unable to complete the sentence. You thought they were minor, Gorou said. He had not moved from his kneeling position. A small vice, easily hidden. Not the kind of debt that drives a man to sell lives. Yes, they were not minor. Your husband owed more than his annual stipend. The creditors he dealt with were not patient men. They gave him a choice, find money or find ruin. He chose a third path. Yumi's sword arm dropped. The blade's tip touched the ground, something her master had taught her never to allow. She did not care. How do I know any of this is true? You could have written this letter yesterday. You could have invented everything to save yourself. Gorou raised his head. His eyes met hers without flinching. In the inner pocket of your husband's traveling coat, the one he wore that night, there is a hidden compartment. Inside that compartment, you will find a jade token. The gambling house used them to mark high-value clients. The token is carved with a serpent swallowing its own tail. Yumi felt the blood drain from her face. She had kept that coat, had preserved it with his other belongings, unable to dispose of the last things he had touched. She had never searched it thoroughly. Why would she? It was a relic, a memorial, not evidence. How do you know about the coat? Because I searched his body after he died. I took nothing, but I saw the token and understood what it meant. I left it there because I thought someone should find it eventually. Someone who would understand. The fire popped, sending sparks spiraling into the darkness. Yumi looked at the letter in her hand, at the sword that had become too heavy to lift, at the man who had destroyed her life, and then waited 7 years for her to destroy his in return. Why didn't you send this? All these years, you could have told me. You could have freed yourself from waiting. Would you have believed me? The question needed no answer. Of course she would not have believed him. A letter from her husband's killer, claiming the victim was actually the villain. She would have burned it unread, would have dismissed it as the desperate lie of a coward trying to escape justice. She had needed to find him herself, had needed to stand here, sword in hand, ready to strike, before she could hear what he had to say. You knew, she said slowly. You knew I would come. You waited because you knew that was the only way I would listen. I waited because I was tired of carrying this alone, and because I owed you the truth, even if you killed me before hearing it. If this story is gripping you, leave a like. It tells the algorithm that tales like this deserve to live. And if you want to walk with us through more echoes of old Japan, subscribe and join our community. Yumi walked to the edge of the courtyard, where a fallen pillar offered a place to sit. She lowered herself onto the cold stone, her sword across her knees, and stared at nothing. 7 years. 7 years of believing she knew who her husband was. 7 years of treasuring his memory, defending his honor, transforming herself into an instrument of vengeance on his behalf. And now this. She thought of Hiroshi as she had known him. The gentle smile he gave her each morning. The way he listened when she spoke, as if her words were the most important thing in the world. The pride in his voice when he spoke of his duties, his lord, his family's legacy. Had any of it been real? Or had she been married to a performance? A mask worn so well that even his wife could not see beneath it. The gambling, she said quietly. When did it start? Gorou had risen from his knees. He sat now by the fire, adding small branches to keep it burning. He did not approach her, maintaining the distance she had established. From what I could discover, he began visiting the gambling house about a year before your marriage. Small amounts at first. The debts grew slowly, then quickly. By the time you wed, he was already trapped. He never told me. He told no one. That was part of his skill. The perfect samurai, respected by all, hiding ruin beneath ceremony. Yumi thought of their wedding day. The way Hiroshi had looked at her, eyes bright with what she had believed was love. Had he been calculating even then? Wondering if her family's modest wealth might help cover his debts. The thought was poison. She pushed it away, but it left traces that would not fade. The caravan, she said. Your wife and daughter. How did he know about them? He did not target them specifically. The information he sold was general. Routes, schedules, security arrangements. The bandits chose which caravans to attack based on value. My family was simply. Gorou's voice caught. He paused, steadied himself. They were simply in the wrong place. Wrong time. Wrong caravan. But he knew people would die. He knew. He did not care. Or perhaps he cared, but not enough to stop. That does strange things to men. It makes them capable of justifications they would never otherwise consider. Yumi looked at the sword across her knees. Hiroshi's sword. She had carried it for 7 years as a sacred relic, the weapon of an honorable man waiting to avenge his death. Now she did not know what it was. I sold my hair, she said. The words came unbidden, surprising her. In the first year, when I ran out of money for training, a merchant offered me enough to live on for 3 months. I cut it myself and did not cry until he was gone. She did not know why she was telling him this. Perhaps because the silence was too heavy. Perhaps because her story, her 7 years of sacrifice, suddenly felt like something she needed to speak aloud before it disappeared entirely. I worked as a servant in a steakhouse, scrubbed floors, carried bottles, endured hands that touch where they should not touch. Also, I could pay for another month of training, another step toward finding you. Gorou listened without speaking. I had a chance to stop. In the 4th year, a man offered me marriage, a widower with 2 children who needed a mother. He was kind. He did not care about my past, did not ask questions. He saw something in me worth loving. What happened? I refused. I told myself I could not abandon my purpose, that Hiroshi's ghost would never rest until I avenged him, that my suffering would have meaning only if I completed what I started. She laughed. The sound was bitter, broken. I gave up everything for a lie. For a man who sold innocent people to bandits and came home to kiss me goodnight. The fire had burned low by the time Yumi spoke again. What do you want from me? Gorou looked up. What do you mean? You gave me the truth. You showed me who my husband really was. But you are still kneeling there, still waiting for me to decide. What do you want me to do? I want nothing. Everyone wants something. Gorou considered this. The firelight carved deep shadows in his face, making him look older than his years. When I killed your husband, he said slowly, I thought it would bring me peace. I thought closing my hands around justice would fill the emptiness his betrayal had created. I was wrong. The emptiness remained. If anything, it grew larger, because now I had become a killer as well as a grieving man. He paused, poking the fire with a stick. You have the same choice now. You can kill me. You have every right. I took your husband from you, regardless of who he truly was. I made you a widow. I caused 7 years of suffering. My reasons do not erase your pain, but I want you to know that killing me will not give you what you seek. I know because I sought the same thing and did not find it. Vengeance is a door that opens onto an empty room. You walk through expecting something, and there is nothing there. Yumi gripped her sword. Maybe I do not care about finding something. Maybe I just want to finish what I started. Then finish it. Gorou set down the stick. He shifted back to his knees, assumed the same position he had held before, head bowed, neck exposed. I will not stop you. I meant what I wrote in that letter. If my death brings you peace, take it. I am tired of carrying guilt for a man who deserved what he received. I am tired of living with my family's ghosts. If you end this, you end it for both of us. The invitation hung in the air. Yumi rose from the pillar. She walked toward him, sword in hand, and stopped an arm's length away. From this distance, one strike would be enough, clean, quick. The ending she had imagined 10,000 times. She raised the blade. Gorou did not flinch, did not look up, simply waited, breathing slowly, accepting whatever came. And Yumi stood there, sword raised, muscles tensed for the cut, stood there, and could not move. Why? The word escaped her like a sob. Why can't I do this? Gorou raised his eyes. There was no triumph in them, no relief, only understanding. Because you are not a murderer. You trained yourself to kill, but you could not train yourself to kill without reason. And now your reason is gone. He was still my husband. You still took him from me. I took a life from you. The man you loved never existed. I killed a stranger wearing his face. Yumi's arms trembled. The sword wavered. If I do not kill you, then what was it all for? The training, the hunting, the years I gave up. What was any of it for? I cannot answer that. Only you can. The blade lowered. Yumi's strength gave out, not from exhaustion but from something deeper. A surrender she had not known was possible. She sank to her knees across from him, the sword resting on the ground between them. To people broken by the same man, facing each other in the ruins of what they had each believed. I do not know who I am, she whispered. Without the hunt, without the hate, I built myself around avenging him. If I take that away, there is nothing left. There is you. I do not know who that is anymore. Gorou reached out slowly, carefully, as one might approach a wounded animal. He did not touch her, simply placed his hand on the ground near hers, an offer of presence without intrusion. I did not know who I was either, after I killed him. I thought I was a righteous man delivering justice. Then I realized I was just another killer justifying murder with pretty words. It took years to find something else, something that did not require blood to feel real. What did you find? I do not know if I found anything, but I stopped looking, stopped trying to be the man I was before, or the avenger I became after. I let myself be nothing for a while, and in that nothing, something small began to grow. Not happiness, not peace, just willingness to continue. Yumi looked at him, really looked, perhaps for the first time, not at the killer she had hunted, but at the man who remained after killing had hollowed him out. They were the same, to people who had fed themselves to vengeance and emerged empty. What do we do now? She asked. Gorou shook his head. I do not know. I never imagined getting past this moment. All my planning ended with your sword falling or not falling. Beyond that, there was nothing. The fire crackled. The owl called again, closer now. Yumi looked at the sword on the ground. Her husband's sword, the weapon of a traitor, carried by a fool who had loved a ghost. She could not bear to touch it. They sat through the night without sleeping. Not as enemies, not as friends, simply as to people too exhausted to move and too broken to pretend otherwise. Yumi fed the fire when it burned low. Gorou boiled water for tea, sharing his small supply of leaves. They drank in silence, watching the sky lighten from black to gray to the soft pink of approaching dawn. I need to see it, Yumi said finally. See what? The evidence, the jade token, the gambling house, whatever proof exists beyond your letter. You still do not believe me? I believe you. but I need to see it for myself. I need to hold it in my hands before I can." She stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence. Before she could what? Let go? Move forward? She did not know what came next. The gambling house was destroyed years ago. The owner died in a fire, along with most of his records. But the token should still be where I left it. If your husband's belongings were preserved, they were. My family kept everything. They thought I might want them someday, when the grief passed. She laughed quietly. The grief never passed. I just transformed it into something else. Will you return to them? Your family? Yumi considered the question. She had not spoken to her family in 6 years, had sent no letters, accepted no contact. In her mind, she had already died. The woman who would return from the hunt, mission complete, was supposed to be someone new, someone reborn through vengeance. But vengeance had not come, and the woman sitting in this ruined temple was neither the wife she had been nor the avenger she had tried to become. "I do not know where I will go," she admitted. The sun broke over the mountains, flooding the temple with golden light. The ruins looked different in the morning, less haunted, just old stones and broken wood, waiting for time to finish what fire had started. Gorou stood, his joints cracking from the long night on cold ground. He walked to where his sword lay and looked at it for a moment without picking it up. "I made a vow," he said, "after your husband died. I would not carry this sword again until someone came to claim the debt I owed. You came. The debt is yours to collect or forgive." Yumi rose as well, her body stiff, her mind clearer than it had been in years. Clear and empty and waiting to be filled with something other than hate. "I do not want your death," she said. The words surprised her, even as she spoke them. "I thought I did. For 7 years, I wanted nothing else. But you were right. It would give me nothing. Just another emptiness on top of all the others. Then what do you want?" She looked at him, at the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the weariness that mirrored her own. "I want to understand how to live without this, without the hunt, without the purpose it gave me. I do not know how to do that alone." Gorou was quiet for a long moment. "I have been alone for 7 years, he said. "It is not something I recommend." "Then do not be alone." The words hung between them. Not a proposal, not a promise, just an acknowledgement that they were both lost, and that being lost together might be less unbearable than being lost apart. Yumi looked at her husband's sword, still lying on the ground where she had dropped it. For 7 years, she had carried that blade, had cleaned it, sharpened it, slept with it beside her futon. It had been her most sacred possession, the symbol of everything she was fighting for. Now it looked like what it was, a piece of metal that had belonged to a man she never really knew. "I cannot carry it anymore," she said. "Then leave it. It feels wrong to abandon it here in the dirt." Gorou walked to where the sword lay and knelt beside it. He examined the blade with a warrior's eye, noting the quality of the steel, the craftsmanship of the guard. "A fine weapon," he said. "Wasted on the man who owned it. What should I do with it?" Gorou considered. Then he rose and walked to the ruined temple's main hall, where a stone altar still stood among the debris. He placed the sword on the altar, positioning it carefully, almost reverently. "Let the temple have it," he said. "A offering to whatever spirits remain here. They can decide what it means." Yumi watched him, this man who had killed her husband, now performing a small ceremony to lay that husband's sword to rest. There was something almost unbearably sad about it, and something almost unbearably right. She walked to the altar and stood beside him. "I do not know how to pray anymore," she said. "I used to, before. But somewhere in the training, in the hunting, I forgot how." "Then do not pray. Just stand here for a moment. Let the silence be enough." They stood together before the altar, the sword between them and the morning light streaming through the broken roof. No words, no rituals, just presence and breath, and the slow release of something that had been held too tightly for too long. When Yumi finally turned away, she felt lighter, not healed, not whole, but lighter, as if she had set down a stone she had been carrying so long she had forgotten it was there. The tea house stood at the edge of a mountain village, 3 days' walk from anywhere important. It was a small establishment, modest but clean, serving travelers who passed through on their way to the northern provinces. The tea was good, the rooms were simple. and the couple who ran it asked no questions about their guests' pasts. Yumi wiped down the counter as the afternoon light slanted through the windows. Her hands, once trained to kill, now performed simpler tasks: pouring tea, arranging flowers, sweeping the entrance path each morning. She did not miss the sword. That surprised her sometimes. She had expected to feel its absence like a missing limb. Instead, she felt only relief. The door slid open. Gorou entered, carrying a basket of vegetables from the small garden they maintained behind the building. "The radishes are ready," he said, "and I think the beans will be good in another week. Did you check the carrots? Still small. They need more time." He set the basket on the counter and began sorting the vegetables. They worked in comfortable silence, the easy rhythm of people who had learned to share space without filling it with unnecessary words. A traveler had asked them once how long they had been married. The question had startled them both. They were not married, were not lovers, not in any conventional sense. They were simply two people who had found each other at the end of their respective roads and decided to walk the next road together. What to call that, neither of them knew. "A letter came," Yumi said. "From my sister." Gorou looked up. "What does she say?" "She wants to visit. She has heard rumors that I am alive, that I am running a tea house in the mountains with a mysterious man." Yumi smiled faintly. "She always did like rumors. Will you invite her?" Yumi considered. A year ago, she would have refused, would have kept hiding, kept running from the life she had abandoned. But a year had changed things. Not dramatically, not completely. Just enough to make reconnection feel possible. "I think so. I think I am ready." Gorou nodded. Double quotes good. They returned to their work. Outside, the mountain wind stirred the trees, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. Once each month, Gorou made the journey to the eastern province. It took for days each way, through difficult terrain, to reach the mountain pass where his wife and daughter were buried. Yumi had offered to accompany him, but he always refused. This was something he needed to do alone. He would sit beside the grave for hours, sometimes talking, sometimes silent. He told Akemi about the tea house, about the travelers who passed through, about the small garden that was finally producing decent vegetables. He told Hannah about the birds he had seen, the flowers that were blooming, the funny things the village children said when they came to buy sweets. He did not tell them about Yumi. That felt too complicated, too difficult to explain. But he thought they would understand. Akemi had always wanted him to find peace. Hannah had always wanted him to smile. He was not at peace. He did not smile often, but he was closer to both than he had been in 7 years. "I still miss you," he said on his most recent visit. "Every day. But missing you does not hurt the way it used to. I do not know if that is healing or just forgetting. Maybe they are the same thing." The wind moved through the pine tree above the grave. Gorou liked to imagine it was Akemi, responding in the only way she could. "I will come back next month," he said. "I always will, until I cannot anymore." He placed fresh flowers on the grave, bowed deeply, and began the long walk back to the tea house, to the life he had somehow, against all expectation, managed to build from the wreckage. On the anniversary of the night she had not killed him, Yumi found Gorou sitting on the tea house porch, watching the sunset. She sat beside him without speaking. They had learned to be comfortable with silence, to let it hold what words could not. "1 year," Gorou said finally. "1 year. I did not think I would live this long. After your husband, I thought the next person who came for me would finish it. I was ready for that. I was ready to be the one who finished it. And now." Yumi watched the sun sink behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "Now I am ready for other things." She did not specify what, did not need to. The tea house, the garden, the travelers who brought news of the wider world, the letters from her sister, the slow process of remembering who she was before grief transformed her into a weapon. These were small things, ordinary things, the kind of things she had once taken for granted and would never take for granted again. "I used to think vengeance was the only purpose worth having," she said, "the only thing strong enough to keep me alive. But it was not keeping me alive. It was keeping me from dying, which is not the same thing. What is the difference? Dying is what the body does. Living is what you choose. I was not choosing anything. I was just waiting for the end. Gorou nodded slowly, and now, Yumi turned to look at him. This man who had been her enemy, her target, her reason for existing. Now he was something else, something she still did not have words for. Now I choose the tea house, the garden, the mountain, this porch, this sunset, this moment. She paused. I choose to be here. That is enough. They sat together as the light faded and the first stars appeared. To people who had come to the end of vengeance and found, on the other side, something neither had expected. Not happiness, exactly. Not peace. Just the willingness to continue. And for now, that was enough. If your heart is still open for one more tale, follow the card on your screen. I've chosen another journey that pairs beautifully with this one. Whenever you're ready, I'll be waiting in the next story.